If the right data sets are not there, you can't put in the right budget. You can't put in an emergency plan or any type of planning because our costs are going up. Time is now being factored into saying, am I going to go to the event?
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the Business Events Podcast. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Akshar Patel, Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Development at eShow, an event management solutions provider providing over 1,900 organizations and 6 million attendee experiences globally. With more than 20 years experience spanning event management, hospitality, and strategic planning, Akshar has led the execution of marquee events like the Hospitality Show and overseen portfolios with budgets exceeding $10 million. Prior to joining eShow, Akshar held key leadership roles at AAHOA, the Obesity Society, the Meeting Advice, where he consistently delivered results through operational excellence and innovation. Today, we'll explore how technology is not only streamlining logistics, but also reshaping the way event teams think, plan, and create value, from the behind-the-scenes workflows to post-event impact. Akshar, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me, and it's always good to be in your company and on your show here. So thank you for having me, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Absolutely. So let's start with your journey. You've built a remarkable career in event management and strategy, from leading major portfolios at AAHOA and the Obesity Society to now shaping the future of event technology at eShow. What first drew you into the world of events, and what's kept you inspired over the past 2 decades?
Yeah, I think, what drew me into events is a couple of things. One is my family background, my cultural background, and I think it just whirlwinded into the personality or the person that I am today. So, hospitality has run through my blood and my family for many years. We are in the hotel business. My parents owned a small motel in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, 13 rooms. And I remember, behind the front desk with my dad and so forth. And, we were always hosting guests, but we were also hosting family as well. Being in Cape Cod, during the summer months, who doesn't want to go to the beach and kind of enjoy that experience? So we were always hosting people, and I kind of enjoyed it, right? I kind of liked playing that host role, and that kind of spiraled into my academic career. I have a background in marketing. I thought that I would want to go out there and lead marketing campaigns creatively or strategically. And then I actually found my light when I realized that my passion was in the hospitality and events side, right? And I was able to combine that with my experience on the hotel side, being on event teams at renowned hotels like the Intercon Willard in Washington, D.C., which is a neighbor to the White House, and many other institutional buildings and organizations in our country. And then, that just led me to my role at AHOA, the Hospitality Show, and so forth. And now with event technology, I think where I am now, there's an analogy that I use that any event typically has 4 line items or budget items that are needed, right? You've got your AV and production, you've got your F&B venue, and then now you've got technology that backs up a good event. And I found myself in a good spot. And the reason I think the journey has also been good is I've been able to take my experience from a client side and operational side, and now with the technology side, I'm able to bridge the gap between clients, show organizers, as well as service providers. And I think that gives another voice, but a different perspective from where I was, where I am now, to my fellow peers in the industry.
So building on that, let's just talk about your current role at eShow. What is it that drew you to the company's mission or vision that sort of resonated with you at this stage of your career?
Yeah, it's a funny story. So I stumbled upon eShow having a conversation with the current CEO, and we were talking about just exactly what I said, that he was looking for someone from the industry that could come on to eShow and lead the sales and marketing and the strategy divisions, because someone that comes from that industry or knows the painstaking challenges or points that show organizers are going through would seem to be a better fit or conversation for someone providing that solution. And I think it was humbling from his side as well, because as an entrepreneur, and even in your space, when you have kind of given birth to this baby from premature phases to teenage phases to adult life, and then you realize that in this journey, it needs to flourish, and sometimes you need to bring in new talent to kind of grow that. And I thought that was very humbling of our CEO Raju Patel to kind of understand that and bring more people from the industry on board. I'm surrounded by a great team of roughly about 150 team members, both here in the US and international waters. But we all have some connectivity to the event space. So we're able to build solutions or provide solutions for the event industry, having been in that space.
And so what's the unique value that you think eShow is bringing to the event space right now, particularly as the event industry faces rapid transformation?
Yeah, the transformation part I think is key here. So while COVID is way behind us, it left a very lingering effect on all of us in certain facets. And I think one of the things that it did was it kind of minimized teams to smaller headcounts, right, at organizations, et cetera. And typically, the only really way to substitute human resources is with either technology or other types of software resources. And what we're able to do today is we've got about 13 to 15 different modules that eShow offers. You don't have to use all of them in one platform, but you can even go a la carte. So things like registration, mobile app, conference management, trade show management, etc., where typically organizations or teams had a dedicated body behind each of those spokes, right? And now that maybe one person is doing 3 jobs or overseeing 3 divisions, we're able to supply one dashboard or a platform where that one person can input that data and have a good output. So, for example, if you're a show organizer and you've got your show, scheduled 2 to 3 years out or multi-years out, we typically take that actual contract and space and put it into our system. So that person that's leading that event can seamlessly, input data, do conference management, meeting space logistics. And then at the end of the day, as you know, when you have to correspond with AV teams, your general service contractor, your sponsorship fulfillment teams, all of this data comes out of one system, and it's revised version control, is a great challenge for all of us, even with the smart sheets, the Google Sheets, and all the PMIs out there. But eShow, I think, has a very good grasp, and that's one of our USPs to bring efficiency, but also ease of doing planning business events or any type of events to show organizers.
So let's shift to the challenge that I think every event team is navigating these days, which is complexity. From your experience supporting hundreds of organizations, what would you say is the most pressing operational pain point facing event professionals, especially on the technology side?
I think it's a combination of CRM systems and attendee-based systems and how that is kind of being integrated. I know we're going to probably talk about some integrations here shortly as well, but systems internally typically have not been talking to each other, right? And now the challenge is how do you consolidate systems but have them talk to each other? One of the biggest things that is facing all events right now is attendance, right? And then the retention, attendee acquisition. How do we get more, feet in space? Or on the hotel side, we used to call it heads in beds type situation. And though that challenge right now is immense, because the data points that were in legacy systems now moving over into new integrations or new systems is what's facing challenge. One of our core verticals or business profiles are associations. So associations have an AMS system, a CRM system, or other systems that need to talk to each other. So what we're doing is having seamless integrations. We're trying to bridge those together so all data points can talk to each other. Because to plan, whether it's a 200 person, executive event or a 5,000, 10,000 person citywide event, that data is really crucial, and it's factoring into major decisions, major budget type decisions, or experience type decisions.
And so do you see that complexity changing the way that organizations are thinking about their tech stack and strategy overall?
It's a direct line of either influential decision making, because what you're paying for now is what you want to get your ROI in 3, 5, 7 years. So what do I kind of mean by that, right? So data is everything. If you don't have the right data before you start planning an event, or we were talking about launches right before we came on the air here, to factor in or budget or forecast, if the right data sets are not there, you can't put in the right budget. You can't put in an emergency plan or any type of conceptual planning, because our costs are going up. Time is now being factored into saying, am I going to go to the event? One of the data points that I was going to share with you is that, our good friends at Merits and other research labs, they're sharing, and we're experiencing this, that 60% of most of any event registrations are coming in the 4-week or less window. So think about it from a planning aspect of it. If you're seeing the most influx of registrations coming in at 4 weeks or less, typically cutoffs are 4 weeks or 2 weeks before. You need to get your guarantees in, you need to get your workforce in, etc. So all these points, give you that opportunity to have plan A, plan A1, plan B, plan B1, C, C1, etc. In a landscape that's ever changing.
So with so many tools out there, some game-changing solutions still sort of fly under the radar. In your view, which tools or platforms could drastically improve the attendee or organization experience, but sort of remain underutilized?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of areas. One is the mobile engagement piece of it. So mobile apps are being more and more customized. They're also being more asked for because of the fact that registrations are coming in late. So, people that are making their decisions whether I'm going to go attend an event or a meeting, etc., are happening in that 4-week or less window. They're trying to see who's at that event, right? So if I haven't made my decision today, but I know I need to see you, Matt, and your team, etc., before I register, if I see that you registered, that's going to trigger me to, register and say, I should go to that event. One, because I can get the event side of it done, but I want to have a meeting with Matt, etc., and get business done. I think the second piece of this is integration around content and conference side. We have seen that the slogan "content is king" has been thrown around for many years, and I think there's a big opportunity to kind of bring that now out to more fruition, whether it's through AI aspects of it, whether it's through actual experiences. So one of the things that we are trying to figure out is how can our system, because we're data farmers, right? As a tech stack or tech company, we can collect so much data, but how can we give back to content? Is it through emotions? Is it through AI? Is it through surveys, etc.? I mean, you and I have probably been in many general assemblies or public assemblies, and does a speaker resonate with us? Are we tuned out after 5 minutes, or are we still intact at 25 minutes, right? So that whole aspect of it, I think content is the second bucket. The third aspect of it is the exhibitor journey. So that's one area that eShow is heavily focused on. We know that large trade shows and so forth are funded by the exhibitors and the sponsorship dollars that kind of generate that revenue. But these exhibitors and the trade show side, they also deserve the same attendee journey experience as anyone coming for a conference. So whether it's through registering, whether it's through booth sales, whether it's through the communications, whether it's through floor mapping. So we're bringing all that again to one dashboard at eShow to give a seamless journey to all stakeholders and all attendees. But I think these three areas are heavily looked upon right now, but also an area of concern, but also an area of opportunity to grow that into better engagement.
Well, let's sort of jump onto that idea of integration for a second, or I should say the lack thereof, because, despite all the talk, many teams are still operating in silos, disconnected platforms, data, even from internal departments. So, what are the biggest barriers you're seeing when it comes to building that truly integrated event tech ecosystem? And is there an example of a good integration that saved the day, where a poor integration could have caused a problem?
Yeah, I'll answer that a little differently if you don't mind, and I'll answer that in two buckets. So we recently had a client join us, and obviously for privacy reasons, I can't name them, but I actually love the way that we onboarded them and they onboarded with us. And what that means is typically, when an RFP goes out, it's typically either the meeting planner or someone, of senior leadership on the marketing or commercial side that heads all that, right? But when we first had the first conversation with them, they brought on their events person, they brought on their marketing person, they brought on their business development person, a membership person, and an IT person. And when I got into the call, I thought I was on, it was like Thanksgiving dinner. I said, this is the first time I'm seeing so many people on a call to discuss, our solution. And as the conversation has progressed, it really dawned on me that this is how conversations should be. And the reason is that the integration starts with bringing the right people to the table first, that understand the holistic opportunity at hand to say, hey, IT department, what do you need out of eShow to integrate with you? Hey, business development, hey, marketing, hey, events, hey, membership, or anyone with attendee acquisition, what do you all need from this platform for it to support our needs, right? And then what that did is the next call, I actually brought our entourage as well. I brought our IT development team, I brought our business development team, and so forth. And the conversation that we had there was actually the inception of the integration. And what I mean by that is the conversations actually helped the technical process because everyone was on the same page from day one. So the questions that are typically asked 4 or 5 rounds after, they were asked in the first round. So I think integration has another spoke to it, that it starts with the teams, both on the client side as well as the service side. And then to jump to the technical piece of it, we are seeing a lot of, siloed either platforms or departments working in that tangent, but we're also able to now see that they're willing to break down those swim lanes and say we need to work together collectively and do one seamless integration rather than multiple platforms, because of what I mentioned is that there's just too many data points at that point. There's too many touch points. There's too many chiefs in the kitchen, is another famous saying that we have in our industry. So what we're also doing is we are trying to make that integration very seamless, but also easier. Things that we're doing is we're trying to create these bridges between AMS systems, CRM systems, where it's a plug and play. You don't have to go through a full blown integration, potentially, or that whole life cycle of it. If there's a way that we can, talk to each other technically faster, that's one thing that we're doing, because it minimizes the amount of, overhead and workmanship on both sides. And we want faster results. We don't want to be sitting in a 6 to 8 month cycle. And that's some of the advanced technology that our product team and our tech teams are doing, to say, AMSA or CRMB, we have solutions for you. Here it is, one price, or some fluctuation pricing, but it's just a much easier plug and play system, or integration, I should say.
So, from behind the scenes, what are some of the most common blind spots that even experienced teams miss in that sort of operational planning? These might not show up in post-event surveys, but can quietly erode the experience or the results. If you could wave a wand and eliminate one recurring blind spot across the industry, what would it be and why?
It's the blind spot of not having a holistic outlook on the whole event, right? So what I mean by that, and I was guilty of this when I first started in the industry, right? And I think it starts with me, or it starts at home. So I used to look at it to say the attendee is the person I need to really focus on. Everything else is either secondary, or I can bundle it up, I should say. And I learned very quickly, after 1 or 2 failures of my own, that I couldn't do that. I needed to have an equal lens on my attendee journey, on my exhibitor journey, on my vendor journey as well, right? Because to me, it's not me who makes a show or breaks it. It's the team behind me or the team on the front lines with me. So I took a very back seat at one point and said, how do I bring the back team or my support team to the front? And when I looked at that to say exhibitor, attendee, stakeholder, vendor, etc., or partner, I would say rather than vendor, that gave me a better outlook to say I need to plan equally for all, but in different ways. And I still think that we sometimes are blindsided by just let's just go. I don't think it's fault of anyone, but I think it's time, right? Because as event organizers or people that are in charge of delivering, we're on a time crunch. We're rinse and repeat type individuals because our event ends today and we've got 2 more in 3 weeks. So we're just kind of going and going and going. But what needs to happen is you can go, but you need to pause, introspect, and say, what can I take from this event of learnings, implement into the next 1 or 2 in the next couple of weeks? And that's how you evolve. And I think that's a blind spot that's getting better. But again, with business demand coming back, demand in general, demand on ROI or TOI, time on investment is what I would also say. That sometimes blinds us to say, we need to stop and think of what we're actually doing or how we're going to do it next.
So there's a massive wave of emerging tech from AI, automation, personalization. It's hitting the event world fast. Which of these innovations do you think are genuinely improving attendee experiences or operational efficiency? On the flip side, are there technologies you think that are more hype than they are help right now?
Yeah, I'm probably going to get a couple of frowns or a couple of thumbs up on some of these comments, but you know me, I'm a pretty straight shooter, and I respect everyone's opinions, but I'm just giving you my personal opinion here. You know, I think we haven't fully grasped what AI can and cannot do for our industry, and what do I mean by that? So, we are a people's industry. We are a handshake industry. We are a hugging industry that, when we don't see each other for a while, it's kind of like, oh my God, where's the time gone? Right? Like, I haven't seen you for so long, etc. But we're using AI in terms of where some people are, or whoever's using it is using it for communications as an experience. In some recent conversations at a roundtable that I was part of, it was really interesting to see where AI is being used heavily, but then the results were kind of like people are not satisfied with that communication because they don't get to either hear, see, or feel a real person on the other side. So I think the communications part is a little dicey. Where can you use AI and where you probably shouldn't use AI? The other part of it is also the investment factor. You asked about, are some things hype and some things are help, or I think that's what you said, but it's also not it's not cheap to invest into some of this new technology that's coming out, right? Everyone wants a brand new shiny car at all given times, but the affordability or the practicality is still not there. You're not able to supply or supplement that because of investment factors. Again, I think the other piece of it is that some of the technology that's out there is the return on investment, right? Any business that you can make your initial investment back in 3 years or less typically is a good investment. But I think we're seeing that it's taking longer periods of time to get your investment back. So I'm a little old fashioned still at this point to say that personal touch is still going a long way. I recently just, the same roundtable that I came back from, I wrote 30 individual emails to each of those attendees because I didn't want to do a BCC. I didn't want to do an AI generated email or, hey, write me 30 emails, customize it, and let me send it off. I was actually very surprised to see the amount of responses that I got back. And they were also genuine responses. Hey, great to meet you. Your presentation was insightful. Let's try to keep in touch. So that to me was an attestament, but also reconfirmed that personal touch is still there. Some of the other technology, I think around RFID beaconing is something that is up and coming as well. As you know, the badge is probably one of the most traditional things that you collect at events. Olympians gather gold medals, silver medals, bronze medals. I've got a wall of some of my favorite badges of favorite events. Why? Because I cherish them, or there's a memory behind that badge, right? But that badge is like your passport. It's your driver's license. It's your access to other people. So I think it's how do you now take your badge and put a beacon in it, whether it's RFID, those types of technologies I think are going to be really important to watch out for. And some of it we are in the pipeline of, because that creates connectivity, that drives business, that drives networking, and it's also traceable, or you can deliver data points on it to say, I actually went to a show and I beaconed with 5 others or 50 others and I got data points out of it.
Yeah, I mean, like all professionals, I have a whole wall of lanyards and passes, which are sort of my little badges of honor as well. So I know where you're coming from on that. So too often, look, the event ends, and so does the tech story. But post-event tech can be just as critical. How do you think event professionals should be thinking about technology when it comes to post-event measurement through insights or long-term ROI?
So we're actually doing 2 things, and it's a process that we're doing. One is post-event reporting. We've actually built out a little bit more robust reporting on our side, but we're also partnering up with some really intelligent companies that have a little bit more detailed reporting in terms of attendance analytics or sponsorship analytics to kind of give that feedback back to the clients to prepare for next event or next year, whatever the event cycle is. The second thing that we're highly suggesting, and we're actually doing this, is a strategy meeting post-event with our clients on the either tech stack or things that we observed during the whole pre-event process, but also on site to say, we observed this. Maybe we have a solution that could help you get to that point. So, for example, the story of conference management, where everything is on an Excel sheet, 200 tracks, 200 speakers, etc. And it's a nightmare for someone to be on the other side, to be managing all that right together. So here's our conference management module that I think we can help you with. But we're then taking that strategy meeting to see how we can grow with our clients for our events and for their events. And I think that's one thing that I would suggest to any service provider, to have these types of very candid, open meetings with your clients, because it adds value. It adds value back to the client, but it also adds value to you as your company to say we're actually growing and providing solutions in real time. And then I think the other piece of it is obviously the NPS scores and the traditional survey methods, et cetera. But again, it's all coming back to that personalization, that personal touch, that account management that people want. And we're happy to say that at eShow, we're thriving on, my team sometimes makes fun of me on this white glove service that I keep on throwing around, where I use hotel analogy, but event technology is kind of like the concierge of the hotels to the events industry, right? When you can't register, who do you call? You call the call center, you call someone at registration. But we're also the bellman and the bellwoman of a hotel, right? It's the first interaction that someone has in terms of going to an event, whether it's pre-event or on-site, going through that registration process. You're a seasoned traveler and event person as well, right? When you can't register in less than 2 minutes, you kind of, you play thumb war with yourself and your screen. You're like, why can't I get this thing to register? And you say, you know what, I'll do it later. And that's the practicality that we live in.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had a recent experience where I was trying to register for something, and it was just very simple. I just wanted to make sure that I could go to the event, that I could get in the door. And the experience, and I'll quote Julia Solaris, who's like, stop making your registration process and all of this. Like, you're not trying to get all this data on the first interaction, right? What you're trying to do is get somebody to come to your event. You'll get opportunity throughout that process. And that's, I think, speaking to the integration bit that we talked about earlier, that when you start talking about different data points and where you want to gather them and where you want to store them and how you want those all to interact, you don't have to do that on the first day. You don't have to do that in the first interaction. That's, I think, the real strategic part about it is, step one, we're going to get their name and their email address. That's all we need. We need to know that they're coming to the event. now we have additional touch points throughout the month leading up to the event, or the 6 months leading up to the event, where we can gather more specific and targeted bits of information that we need to be able to service them well as an attendee and program the event well. I've participated in a lot of events where, again, that sort of strategy comes out in the first, which is that I'm going to get your name and the fact that you're coming in the first interaction, and then 3 weeks later, I'm going to say, "Hey, what do you care about, and what do you want to know from this event or this happening?" Okay, well, that's a great data point. Okay, now, hey, what are you particularly interested in learning? What are you interested in doing? Like, what's your main objective for attending? All of these kind of things. And it's parsed out over a period of time. So by the time I arrive, you hit those really key objectives that any event organizer would have, and any event attendee would have, that I want to go into a curated, specialized, only for me way of experiencing this gigantic event and not feel like I am one of a million here. And so I think event professionals, especially as they dive into more event tech, sort of feel like they have to do everything all at once. What's the name of the movie about the multiverse? It's Everything Everywhere All at Once, or whatever it is. Michelle Ho. Anyway, it's not that. It's a strategic plan. It's a measured way of curating the experiences, and that you have to give yourself time and the ability to return on that. You've worked across a lot of verticals, from hospitality, healthcare, and tech. How should event tech strategy flex to meet the needs of those industries with very different compliance requirements and attendee expectations? And I think that bleeds into what I was just talking about, of like, where is that grander strategy, and how does it flex in those different verticals?
The flex part is really interesting, because with so much compliance with GDRPs and just different sectors, we're trying to break that barrier. I'll be totally honest with you, because as some reports are saying now, given the fact that international attendees are now being hesitant to come over here, and we're seeing more business sometimes leaving the US and going into either Europe, Asia, the Middle East with events and so forth, and that cross contamination of attendees, that data set point, we're trying to at least figure out how do we play in the sandbox internationally rather than just domestically. The compliance thing is very crucial, because it's privacy, it's data, right? So, sometimes we're challenged by clients that want to have a little bit more leniency on data sharing and data points. But as a organization, we sometimes have to kind of reel that back and share the ramifications or the pros and cons of why we're doing, this way because of compliance issues. I think we're going to see probably in the next 6 to 8 months that either things are going to get a little tighter, or maybe even a little more lenient, because of the fact that while it's noise, I hope it's just noise, but we can't ignore the fact that attendance may be factored in, or we're going into some softer times economically that is forecasted, or they're saying it that way. But we're going to have to be ready for diversification, but also scaling either left, right, up, and down as well, given what we're dealing with. And compliance is an everyday red flag for us. We're trying to make sure that we keep our clients and their data, but also the industry protected at the same time. I see this more now, given on the tech side, is all of the I guess the scamming emails for housing, or to say, have you registered here? And I keep on seeing the same headshot with 9 different companies coming up in my email, and I'm like, this doesn't seem right, and so forth. But that all is behavior of compliance, and where people are finding these opportunities to fish out data or fish out information, etc. We're staying on top of it as much as we can, but we're crossing all of our T's, dotting our I's to make sure that we are compliant in all areas. But also, we're going to have to be mindful of what's going on in the world as well.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times, and I find this in industry conferences more than I do things that are produced for other verticals. But there was one time we registered to do something at an event, and like the next day, we got inundated with those spam emails, right? Of like housing, of attendee lists, and all this kind of stuff. And I remember emailing the organizer and saying, hey, I think you've had a data breach. And their answer was, oh yeah, we've known about that for a couple of years. Just ignore it. Like, how is this possible? Like, this is not acceptable for
that answer a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, we got to wrap things up. But so if there are one or two immediate practical actions that event professionals can take today to elevate the visibility, impact, and strategic value of those operations, what would you recommend?
I think it's around, time and efficiency. How can you, like you said it yourself, not just from the registration standpoint, how quickly you can get people registered, et cetera, but on site, I think, the efficiency and the operations, how can you get attendees more engaged rather than in queues, give them this experience of they're always immersed in something. We've gone from registration to digital boards, kiosks, etc. for that fact. So just one quick, case study I'll tell you is that you don't need to build out a large registration area. We've got these now kiosks, whether it's a 3-foot kiosk or a 6-foot kiosk that you go in and it's like, what you would order at a fast serve restaurant. You go there, you scan, your badge spits out and you're ready to go. You can put these kiosks at a hotel, at an airport, or wherever you want, as long as it's got dedicated internet lines, etc. But what it's doing is it's reducing the time, it's reducing the cost efficiencies. And again, no one likes to check into a hotel and lug their stuff or go a half a mile down the road and go pick up their badge, etc. How do you create these experiences? We were just at an industry event that we showcased this, and people love them. So try to make life easy. That's, I think, a very basic thing I want to say. Try to make life very easy. And with our solutions at eShow, again, you don't need all 13. That's totally fine. But we're here to help the industry make the planning side a little bit more, actually a lot more easier and more efficient, but also the attendee and journey, as well as the exhibitor journey or any attendee journey, much more experiential rather than segmented.
Absolutely. Well, Akshar, thank you very much for joining me today on Production Value Matters. And for those of you listening, if you'd like to access more resources, further deep dive articles, or find out about upcoming episodes, go to productionvaluematters.com and subscribe there. And of course, it always really helps us out if whatever platform you're listening to this right now, if you could give us a rating and leave us a comment, it helps the algorithm put this content in front of cool people just like you. So, Akshar, thank you again for joining us on Production Value Matters. It was great talking to you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Matt.
Production Value Matters, the business events podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To learn more about Byrne Production Services and how we can achieve your business goals with meaningful event designs and elevated production value, head over to byrneproductionservices.com. For tailored AV consulting, check out theavadvisor.com, where you can book a free 15-minute consultation. Also, be sure to search for Production Value Matters, the business events podcast, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening.